So many systems are like that. Unfortunately, we have that worked into the automotive industry and all kinds of stuff, creating mass amounts of waste. So I've made one of my goals to go the other direction and try to support sharing my ways of handling things, to do just the opposite, to not create waste, to live minimally, financially, and figuring out how to live with less on a daily basis, which ultimately frees up your time.
Hello, and welcome to the New Humans for New Earth podcast. I'm Queenie, your host, and on this podcast, we believe that every human alive today has a role to play in helping to co-create a new, more loving, and more aligned world. We introduce you to wisdom, perspectives, and information to support and inspire you in making more aligned choices in your life. We're here to help co-create New Earth, so let's talk about it. One of the critical things that I think will help us move from the old paradigm into New Earth is deconstructing some of the mental prisons that we're in, right? Some of the things that are actually holding us in place in supporting the old paradigm. And one of those things, I think, is money. Now, I don't have a problem with money in general, right? But money plays a fundamental role in a capitalist society. Now, you might be hearing me say that and think, yeah, of course it does, Queenie, like, big deal. But this goes beyond using money to buy clothing, shelter, food, entertainment, etc., right? Money shapes our lives in such fundamental and sometimes even insidious ways in a capitalist society like ours, right? So, for instance, it can shape where you decide to go to school and even what you decide to study in school. So it actually impacts what we're putting into our brains, right? It can impact how we feel about ourselves, whether we feel successful, whether we feel fulfilled, whether we feel like we're in a place in our lives that we'd like to be, right? So it can impact our mental health and our self-worth. It can impact who we're attracted to, who we marry, whether we get married. And we're all familiar with the outsized role that money plays in our political system, in deciding which issues get prioritized, which projects get greenlit, right? And I know that so many people are also very familiar with that lifestyle of waking up every weekday morning and having the very first thing that you do be getting ready to go to work so that you can spend the rest of your day making money. So it's impacting how we spend our lives, or at least the bulk of our lives, our working years, right? So I think it's fair to say that money is a subject that occupies us all to one degree or another. And so it can feel mysterious when someone bucks the trend. We want to ask how, why, what's wrong with you? But maybe a better question is, what magic have you figured out? Here to speak with me today and to share his magic with us all is my dear friend, Karl Wallace. Karl is a builder, welder, a self-professed bike geek, and a structural artist. He has one of the kindest and most generous hearts I have ever encountered. And he's dedicated his life to finding ways of avoiding the economic pressures that so many of us are familiar with. So please give a warm New Humans welcome to my dear friend, Karl Wallace.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you making the time.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So let's just jump right in.
Okay.
I think most people are really familiar with what the 9-to-5 grind looks like. And I think too that a lot of people are really familiar with sort of what the entrepreneur business person sort of like life looks like, or at least like the myth of it. But tell us what a day in the life of Karl looks like. Give us a sense. Like, what's the texture of your life look like?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, certainly I'll start with the 9 to 5 has never really worked for me. I kind of I certainly have a struggle with maintaining a schedule like that. I seem to hustle with a lot of little projects. So as far as that goes, makes it a little tough to take a day off sometimes. Actually work hard at not working. And kind of sends you in all directions.
Yeah.
And of certainly learning to say no to all these little projects. And a lot of the projects are often not money makers, which aids to the busyness. I come from a background of coming from a poor area, and barter is something that is been a lifestyle for years there. People figure out how to live without money. Money is for the bills and for everything you can't figure out how to do without money. So in a sense, my background alone has helped develop my operating out of the system, and which I love. And that's obviously something that is needed more than ever just to survive. But most people will figure it out. There'll be more of that.
Yeah, I can relate to the like, I also grew up poor, right? So there is this resourcefulness that you develop as a result of that, right? And then it can be easier, I think, to sort of look around and sort of see where the opportunities are to solve some problems that you might, or people might traditionally like throw money at. But because of that resourcefulness, it's like, oh, well, I know that I can make this, or I know that there's like a cheaper way or something like that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And as times are changing, it takes even more mindfulness. Some things you can build yourself, but it doesn't make any sense because you're going to end up spending more money.
Right.
And is that something that do I want to do it that way? Because time is money. So finding that balance takes research, probably more than ever.
I've also noticed just from observing you that, it seems like, yes, you're always grinding, but there's also an immense amount of variety in what you're doing, right? Like on a given day, you might send me a photo and you're like, oh, I'm by this like waterfall and there's this like beautiful rainbow, It just seems like you're kind of always moving, always going somewhere. And oftentimes it means that you're like traveling and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It is part travel, is part of my livelihood. And that's engineered in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do love that the way I live my life, I have a lot of flexibility. I can drop and do something different. I also enjoy that I'll make a schedule and it often doesn't go that way. So my day is full of surprises and ever changing, ever flowing. I love that.
Yeah. So, I think a very common opinion around money, again, particularly in our capitalist society, right, is that money is the key to everything, right? So, as children, we think, oh, like one day I'll have money and I'll be able to have my life be exactly what I want, right? As adults, it's like money is the key to comfort, success, respect, freedom. But I don't know, like, is that how you feel about money, or sort of what's your opinion about money? What's your relationship to it?
Well, I'm a strong believer in the best things in life are free. Don't take any money at all.
Yeah.
And that, of course, just a huge part of that is simply mindset and recognizing that ultimately the money is not the goal.
Does that mean that you're completely free of money, or how does that flow for you? What's the balance?
Yeah, certainly not. There's things in life I take money,
Mm-hmm.
paying the bills. One of the goals is certainly, how do I get rid of these bills? How do I live my life without these bills?
Mm.
And I've been happily houseless for about 6 years now. So yeah, the goal is to be more and more free of it all the time. I have a lot of inspiration from people that have figured out how to do that.
Mm.
Not only figure out how to do that, but also put in for the balance of it all. Like we have government funded programs still, fortunately, to help people out. It's a system that's supposed to work for us.
Mm.
And they figured out how to completely remove themselves out of the system financially and not be dependent on the system in any way. So big inspiration for me
Mm-hmm.
on that. Like that's maybe not ultimately my goal, but big inspiration for the way I live my life.
Yeah. I've found sort of in my own activities as far as like extricating myself, right, from all the different ways I'm plugged into the system. It's like, for me, the goal isn't perfection, right? It's just like, how much can I sort of back away from this? And I think, and you're sort of pointing to this, right? It's like when the goal is perfection, when the goal is zero, it can almost feel like too much, too overwhelming. You're like, well, I got stuff to do now. Like I have a life to live now, and I think it can be really easy to almost like shame ourselves a little bit or feel like, why even try if I'm so far away from zero? But, for me, if I can let go of that expectation and just be like, no, it's okay to just be here, and then just move a little bit further, and just kind of like keep taking steps towards the goal, then it's like more manageable and you've got that end goal in mind. But I don't know, just like letting go of some of the pressure of it can be really helpful.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Just like anything in life, it's a project.
Mm-hmm.
To be passionate about what you're aiming for is really helps. And if that's ultimately a goal of yours, and it feels like you're forcing yourself a certain direction,
Mm-hmm.
certainly one could take a moment to question their frame of mind. What does it take to get in this frame of mind to make this goal happen?
Yeah. So how long have you been working on this passion project?
It's certainly developed over time. Certainly, in my younger years, I was with a partner that I found I didn't align with, and wanted to have the nice truck and the nice everything. And I quickly realized that I did not want to be a slave to my belongings. And then shortly after that, I had an odd turn in my life where I chose to join the military.
Oh.
And I witnessed firsthand all the government waste, all the incredible amount of spending, and purposely just buying up a bunch of stuff so they don't lose their budget so they can spend a bunch of money again to do the same cycle over again. So many systems are like that. Unfortunately, we have that worked into the automotive industry and all kinds of stuff, creating mass amounts of waste. So I've made one of my goals to go the other direction and try to support sharing my ways of handling things, to do just the opposite, to not create waste, to live minimally, financially, and figuring out how to live with less on a daily basis, which ultimately frees up your time.
Mm-hmm.
The more you have, the more you are a slave to your things. All those things take investment, which means more dollars, more energy, more time consumption of yours.
Right. More administrative burden sometimes. Yeah.
Certainly. So not always the best at doing the downsizing, but it's a consistent goal of trying to collect the things that that treat me right and don't take a lot of maintenance, financially speaking, time, and still have fun and live my life the way I want to.
Yeah. Something your comment like raised to me is you see people who they have the boat and then they have to have a place to put the boat because you're not going to be on the boat all the time, right? And then that's another money sink, right? Or same thing, you have the RV, but you can't actually park the RV like often at your own place or whatever. So you have to like find the place where you can rent to store your RV. And again, money sink, right? And I mean, you brought up the military, and gosh, I mean, I've read, and I want to look into this further, but I've read that like the Department of Defense, or I mean, I guess they call it the Department of War these days, like hasn't actually passed an audit for like years, and it's one of our biggest, like the biggest parts of our national budget, and like they're not tracking the money, right? And gosh. So you said that you sort of first started getting inspired from your first marriage. Were you like the primary breadwinner? Was it kind of like, now we're married, now you're here to like provide me with stuff? Was that sort of the dynamic of it, or?
It was about a 50-50. We both worked at the same place.
Okay.
We had to separate finances. We just didn't see eye to eye on how to spend money.
Yeah. That's real. I mean, I experienced a little bit of that in my marriage as well. There was sort of this like, the traditional expectation is that you're going to pool resources, right? And then you have the joint bank account and right. And when you think back to sort of the more traditional, I mean, like pre-women's lib sort of, right? It's like that sort of made sense because there was one income earner, right? And you were sort of, I mean, just the gender roles involved in that made sense, I think. But sort of now when you're sort of moving into a period of time when you have dual income, right, households, and sometimes even like women are out earning men these days, right? Suddenly, yeah, you have this situation where you might have different approaches to money, and like that became a source of tension in my marriage, and I mean, may have just been pointing to a simple incompatibility, right? Which is sort of what you're suggesting, but yeah, I mean, again, that expectation of pooled resources, making decisions like this but together is I think more and more complicated as, I don't know, the workforce and people in general just get more sort of financially independent and sophisticated. I mean, I don't know that I will ever pool the bulk of my income and money with someone else, even if I do end up getting married again. I just don't, I don't know. We'll see. The future will tell. You do raise a point that I'd like to just sort of address, right? Which is that even though women's lib has happened, even though women are starting to out earn men, there is sort of this, I'll say, residue left in, I think, and tell me if you think this is wrong, but there is sort of this residue left in the concept of what it means to be a man, where it's like, you're the breadwinner, you're the provider, right? And we even see this, or I see it in some of the like contemporary spiritual conversation around relationship, right? It's, if you're a man, you're the provider, you're the leader, right? In this relationship. And you even hear about men who will say like, I'm not ready for a relationship because like I'm not done building my business, and there's this like, I'm not ready to be the provider yet. I don't have the space to take on a relationship because like I ain't got my empire. and it just really smacks of this traditional breadwinner sort of concept. And it's like, look, I run a business. I know it can be really time intensive, right? So there is a practical kind of aspect of this of like, I'm dedicating all this time to this project. So like, I can't show up for a relationship, right? And, there are so many other things you can bring to a relationship besides earning capability. And I think you're a really great example of this, right? It's like what I see in you is like you bring presence. You bring having done a lot of work. You bring being willing to do work, right? Have those uncomfortable conversations. You are one of the best listeners I have ever come across in my whole life, to the point where like I actually try to emulate you when I'm having like a heart to heart with someone. You just have this way of sitting there and listening, and you're so unagendaed that like there will be times when I will realize that I've been going on for so long and you're still just like perfectly just present, engaged, but not clearly not trying to like interrupt my flow, that I get nervous. I'm like, is he actually still listening? Like, have I lost him? But that's just me, right? And so that is such a skill that you have and a gift that you've given to me. And I mean, I'm sure a number of people in your life. Yeah, I try to emulate you as much as I can, and I don't think I've quite made it. I know that people in general, but women in particular, crave that in their relationships. And you were a master.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so I guess like I just like to open it up to you. I mean, I'm assuming that money is not something that you feel like you're necessarily bringing to a relationship. So like, how does your sort of approach to money come up in your relationships, if it does? Like, how does it impact that? And what do you feel like you're bringing, since you're not necessarily the provider?
Yeah, my current marriage, she
Earns.
earns, thank you, me 4 to 1 or a little more.
Yeah.
So exactly, I bring other things to the table. I really enjoy being very mechanical and universal to fix all the things. And my houselessness is actually quite enjoyable, as I have a lot of friends that enjoy my presence. And there's all these little things in life, especially with our systems, that creates selling things as a for a profit. Things are made to be, goodness, what's the term? They're made to be sold. Products are made to be sold.
Yeah.
Not necessarily made to be used.
Oh, give us an example if you can.
And well, there's a little deeper than that, as far as like appliances that have short lives. But many things, they're designed to, between what you run across online or in person, they're designed to attract you and achieve getting your money. Not necessarily designed to be something that lasts.
Yeah.
And of course, if it lasts for the rest of your life, then they're not going to sell you anymore. You're done buying. So our systems really shot us in the foot that way. So end result is our lives, a big part of our lives is maintenance to get through the day, whether it be mechanical things that we use all the time, part of our houses. So there's our friends need things that can take a lot of money to have a professional come and do a repair that we might not have. So one thing that happens is we end up living with compromised things, and that's no fun. So I can be very valuable in the sense that I can show up with a few tools, help out a friend, get them through the day, saves them money. I think it's just a very positive thing in our connection. Everyone's just excited to have, by the time I come around, for me to be there.
Yeah.
So it's a big part of it.
Yeah. Last time we had a snowstorm, I mean, you were out like digging people out of their houses and like towing people out of, like, if their like car had gotten stuck there, you were like there rescuing them, like that's you, like you're the person doing that, right? Like we need more of that. Right. And I think, for like, just to speak as a woman, you kind of touched on this, but it's like, I don't need a man to provide for me. Like, where I've come to with relationship is like, I want you to be self-sufficient, right? Like, I don't want to be necessarily like I don't want to be taking care of you in that way, right? But like, what I don't have is a lot of the sort of mechanical, practical skills and all the accoutrement of that, right? For a lot of some of the more like buildy, handy kind of stuff, like I don't have the setup to like be building myself a table or whatever, right? Like, and so, and particularly in the last year or so, as it feels like stuff is starting to dissolve and crumble, it's like, oh, like what I actually value in another person is practical skills, and like what I find attractive in a man is more and more practical stuff. Do you know how to use a drill? Can you change a tire? And there is value to that, as you're saying, right? I mean, I had a friend recently, he wanted to repaint his kitchen. He's like, I could do it, but it's going to take me a bunch of time, right? And then he's like calling around at contractors and they're charging like a huge markup for their labor because they're working with people often who don't know, because they don't know how to do it.
Mm.
And so there's this like unskilled tax people are like unwittingly paying, which is something that you're pointing to.
Mm. Yeah, there can be some gouging, but unfortunately, our system has driven the price of contractors way up. I've done it that way. I've done it above the table, and the required insurance and the amount of money that you have to hemorrhage to just function as a contractor, I had to charge the customer double what I would normally charge. And I barely kept up. So there's that.
There's that. Yeah.
I did not like it at all. I was charging people too much money, in my opinion, and I didn't see it.
Like the money was not coming to you.
Correct. That's a big thing. They have a tremendous amount of overhead by being a legit contractor. And there's good reasons for that, I suppose. Like legally speaking, he hired Joe off the street and he comes and does a terrible job, and you can't do a whole lot legally if he doesn't have that contractor's license, right? But it's really financially, it's kind of wrecked the whole thing. It does make it so much money that it's out of reach for most people to do such things with a contractor.
Yeah. Well, thanks for keeping me honest. No, I do forget about sometimes, like, there are so many administrative and regulative burdens that we put on people who are just trying to make a living.
And unfortunately, that regulation is not like you might hope or think for the health of the people. It's about control. Yeah. As with all these systems, it's about control. And they're losing the grip at some level. As money becomes less practical, it's losing its value really fast. So now is the time to invest in sustainable things.
Yes.
Because that money is losing its value so quickly. We're all going to have to learn to live with out it more and more. So
Yeah. So what are some ways that you've changed your life in order to avoid money or try to opt out of systems that require money?
a lot of it is changing my way of thinking and literally just focusing on a particular subject of that requires money, and I just don't like spending it. I love to travel, but I cringe at the idea of pulling up to the gas pump for all the reasons, as oil's kind of wrecked our world in a way with the control of the billionaires. So I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And I've somewhat figured out how to ways to sidestep that. A diesel will run great off of vegetable oil.
Yes.
So I've been doing that.
Really?
And other fuels as well.
Really,
For
really.
sure.
Tell us more about that.
Okay. Well, a lot of people don't realize, if you have an older diesel, that if it's properly filtered and the conditions are right, you can literally dump vegetable oil straight into the fuel tank and run off of vegetable oil. A lot of details to it.
So tell us more about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. And as with anything, the nice thing about the more we get pinched, the more people figure out how to operate without buying these products
Out of necessity.
that's designed into our system.
Right.
And we got Joe Bob in Louisiana just dumping engine oil straight into his fuel tank because he figured out it'll run off of that.
Really?
They call that black diesel. He actually is, to get the flash point right, they're filtering their used engine oil, dumping some gasoline in it to a certain ratio and burning it.
Whoa.
But that's not a very nice thing to do to the atmosphere.
Right.
So there's cleaner oils out there, and many of the vegetable oils will work great. And the nice thing about that is those that gas release, the air, the burned fuel, does not attack our systems like fossil fuels do. We're putting a lot of stuff in the air that's really bad for us to breathe. And so vegetable oil does not do that. When people smell your exhaust, it smells like French fries. So anything that's making people hungry.
Right. Yeah. I'm just imagining people being like, oh, suddenly I want fries. I don't know why.
Yeah. And I'm actually doing a build right now that's going to run, when it's doing its job, it's going to run solely off of vegetable oil.
Very cool.
Which is more practical than ever with the high fuel prices.
Right. And who knows how high they're going to get. I mean, we have no idea how long the situation's going to go. And Australia is saying that they only have so much fuel left. I mean,
this has all been very much created.
Right.
There's a lot of it's been intentional, and a lot of fallout that it's just the nature of the beast. So
yeah. And you made a point. It's like more and more I'm starting to wonder about fossil fuels, right? I mean, the exhaust is not good for us. The plastics that get made out of them are also not good for us or the environment, right? The process of extracting them, also not great for the environment. And so more and more I'm just like, is this stuff just supposed to stay in the ground? Like when are we going to figure that part out, right? And I wonder, I mean, maybe this is just me being overly idealistic, but I wonder if sort of the cluster that is happening right now around this, if more and more people will sort of start thinking like you and think like, I'm done supporting this. I am done being part of this. Like, what else can I do, right? Whether it be vegetable oil or, an electric motor conversion or bike life or something like that, right? Relying on public transportation more, right? There's so many different options that it's just like maybe what's happening right now is like that wake up call to be like, okay, let's find a different solution for this. Fingers crossed.
Certainly. Not only is the fuel getting very expensive, it works less now than ever. There's more. They're putting ethanol in it, which does nothing for the mileage. I used to build the core of a machine that turned recyclables into fuel. So at some level, we're literally, when exhaust is coming out of those car tailpipes, we're literally breathing plastic as well. Plastic is part of this equation. So there's corn, there's ethanol, there's recycled plastics, all kinds of nonsense in today's fuel. Correct. Just like poor food, there's a bunch of fillers in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but the cars don't get the same economy these days because there's so much garbage in the fuel.
Like literal garbage.
It's literally literal garbage. It's not all just coming out of the ground directly.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know that the government has a few programs that is recycling. Like one of them is they went to restaurants and they've all but strong-armed them into, we're Standard Oil. We're now going to be buying your oil, your vegetable oil. And that's the biofuel that you see at the pump. They've got their nose in all angles. They realize people are using this vegetable oil to run their cars. So they will go to all these restaurants and undermine that. They'll try to get their hands on all the larger quantities of vegetable oil.
So it takes the supply of the vegetable oil that people might be using to do alternative fuels.
And they're charging us for it. They're mixing that vegetable oil. It's more of a process. They have a process of breaking it down so it'll run into more in the newer diesels. It's still not good for them. It still plugs up the oil filters. They've not quite figured that out. But yeah, the whole thing's a mess. All the cars have become very complex, so you can't easily run vegetable oil off in them. You try to do that with a new car, a new diesel, it's not going to go good.
Right. So if you're wanting to sort of use one of these alternative fuels, you have to look into what kind of car it is, what kind of...
An older diesel.
Yeah.
Preferably early models that are fully mechanical, no computer.
Yeah.
And correct.
Are there any other sort of fuel alternatives or alternative fuel solutions that you'd like to comment about?
Yeah, there is. One neat thing, one is a gasifier. A lot of people don't realize that gasifiers were initially released by the government just at World War II times.
I'm sorry, can you back up and just explain what a gasifier is?
Okay, so a gasifier, I'm not going to have the best description of this, but a gasifier basically creates fuel through burning a number of things, really. Wood works out really well to create fuel for a gasifier. And you can literally use trash to make fuel with a gasifier.
Okay.
The government actually supported that, released information on how to build a gasifier back during the World War times. They were much simpler back then. They ran off of coal.
Okay.
Because the fuel source was a problem. So they were looking at other means. And they're very barbaric. There's this huge combustion system that bolted on the back of your car, the big tube that went to the engine bay, super clunky. And of course, we don't want to burn coal.
Right.
So people have found that you can do it with wood that you can find on the ground of the forest. And the neat thing about that is you can actually stack these systems. So you can have your very efficient vehicle that runs off of vegetable oil, and you can also add in a gasifier.
Yeah.
So if the thing is built properly, you can run this off of multiple alternate fuels.
Just depending on what's available.
The natural resource.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of a gasifier before. Like, why?
Well, yeah, largely, of course, it doesn't support the system.
Okay.
It's anything that is hard for them to regulate. They're going to try to stomp it out and sweep it under the rug. If somebody makes a big name for themselves with a gasifier, the minute suits show up. It's a sad but true story. So unfortunately, a lot of these people that build these alternate systems, it is not good for it's not easy to get the word out. You can do it on a certain level, but you stick your nose in the wrong place in these areas, and all of a sudden you have someone you don't want to be knocking on your door. So, which sadly makes a lot of these things hush hush. And when somebody builds a really nice gasifier system, they can't just distribute it everywhere. There actually was a book published at one time.
Okay.
And I think it was all but seized. But if you can find one of those books, there's a lot of good information out there.
Right.
There's a particular book that was written, and he even had a little CD-ROM. So you could download this information, and the more intricate parts, you could take it to someone that had a CNC and have them make the more complex parts
Okay.
to build your gasifier. And I had a goal of getting my hands on this book.
Right.
But again, if you have enough passion to make a thing happen, you'll figure it out. You'll find those resources. And that's my goal with all these systems.
It's to find the solution.
Find the solution, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you ever get your hands on it, I want it. Let me know. What's being done with our tax dollars is top of mind for a lot of folks right now. But here's a way you may be supporting the oil and gas industry without even knowing it. Where you bank. Maybe you know this already, but when you open an account at a bank and deposit your money there, the bank turns around and uses your money to make more money for itself. Banks use most of their deposits to fund loans and investments they hope will turn a profit. Banks break down into roughly 3 categories. Retail or commercial banks take deposits from the public, make loans, and offer checking accounts. Investment banks provide services to large companies, investors, and governments, helping them raise capital, trade securities, and make deals. Investment banks can earn huge sums of money on the transactions they facilitate. For instance, a 1% fee on a $1 billion deal is $10 million in revenue. The third category of banks are called universal banks. Universal banks combine the services of a commercial bank and an investment bank, providing all services from within one entity. Examples of universal banks you may be familiar with include JPMorgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. These 3 banks rank among the top 5 banks, providing funding to fossil fuel companies since 2016. And JPMorgan Chase, or simply Chase, is the world's biggest funder of fossil fuel projects. In fact, despite adopting a quote net zero goal and other climate commitments, Chase ranks number 1 as the worst financier of fossil fuels. Chase has actually been increasing its fossil fuel financing since 2022. This includes increased financing for fossil fuel expansion plans, amounting to $27.8 billion in 2024. Funding fossil fuel expansion plans essentially means that banks like Chase are financially invested in additional decades of fossil fuel dependence. This at a time when what we need is to divest from fossil fuels. And Chase is not alone in this. US banks contribute 33% of fossil fuel financing globally, amounting to a total of $289 billion in 2024. The next closest country in terms of fossil fuel financing is Canada at 15%. That's less than half of what we're doing in the US. The top US banks funding fossil fuel projects after Chase are Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo. Together, these banks provided 21% of global fossil fuel financing. Now, here's what's interesting about this to me. In 2024, Chase reported total annual revenue of $177.6 billion. 43% of that came from consumer and community banking, or the types of accounts that ordinary consumers like you and me have. That means that in 2024, Chase saw annual revenue from our bank accounts of $76.37 billion. This dwarfs the $53.5 billion that Chase invested in the fossil fuel industry in 2024. What that means is that ordinary consumers like you and me are bankrolling continued and growing investment in the fossil fuel industry by giving our money to banks like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup. But where we bank is up to us, and not all banks are the same. So if you bank at Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or Citigroup, this is your invitation to change that. Yes, it's inconvenient to switch banks and get new bank cards. I know because I've done it. But removing our support from banks that continue to finance fossil fuel projects is worth it. And if you're wondering where you should switch to, check out your local credit union. Unlike banks, credit unions are not for profit, and they're owned by their members, meaning the people who bank there. And unlike banks, they tend to support local initiatives and invest in their communities. So let's opt out of supporting banks who are financing the fossil fuel industry. All right, New Humans fam, let's get back into the episode.
To go back to your question, I'm into other ways to get around than an automobile. There's a big area that has not been filled. And as with many things, the automobile pays the bills. It's a big, big money maker for manufacturers and the government and the fuel systems, and all the systems really rely on the income of automobiles. It's a huge, huge industry. So anything that does not fit that criteria of an automobile gets swept under the rug. They do work to not promote it. For example, you want to buy a car, you're interested in a car, you get on the internet and you search for a car, you're going to find anything under the sun, right? They're going to happily sell you a car.
They'll deliver them to you these days. You can buy a used car and they will deliver it to you.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So that system pays the bills. They want you to be part of that system. Try to find a velomobile in the Pacific Northwest in the United States. It's going to be a lot of work.
And what's a velomobile?
That is basically a human pedal car is what it is, or an adult pedal car, excuse me.
Okay.
It's an adult pedal car. And so it's a full-bodied vehicle, which is real nice in the wintertime in the Pacific Northwest. That area needs a lot of work, honestly. They're great in particular conditions. If you live in an area where they maintain the roads well, where they have plenty of bike corridors, which we are blessed in this area.
We are.
For that. And I forever really happy that they continue to put work into making the bike lanes safer and more of them, and kind of going the other direction in a lot of areas, from the 4 lanes down to 2 lanes and adding bike lanes. And I'm amazed in that and really happy about that, which supports what I'm trying to do. And a lot of times people don't want a car because it's so expensive.
So expensive.
And they are just stuck in that system of having a car. And due to where they live, where they work, their lifestyle, kids, it's really hard to get away from that. But there is ways that a lot of people don't see. And one of them is a velomobile. And they do not quite fit that switch over. So that's a big push that I'm working on right now, is making velos that are more practical for rough roads, more practical for people that have less means to pedal a machine, more practical for people with families, for longer commutes, all those things. I'm going to fill that void.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I'm amazed, honestly, that doesn't exist more. Like I said, they fill our worlds with all these things that we think we need, like a car. And a lot of people don't see that there's other ways. These ways are not being produced around here, and I'm gonna fill that. So you can have a vehicle. You can literally legally have a full-bodied vehicle that requires no license plates, no gasoline, no insurance, no DMV, no DEQ, none of that, and I'm gonna make it happen. So that's one of my pushes. That's a big part of my fight against the system.
Yeah.
Is providing no car automobiles. So,
yeah. You're gonna build the solution.
I'm building the solution.
I love that.
Correct.
So it's non-motorized, human-powered, like a bike, but it has that full body, more like a car. Am I understanding that right?
Well, okay. Let me back up to traditionally a velomobile is a strictly human-powered, full-bodied vehicle, and they have advantages over bicycles. They are far more aerodynamic. You can maintain the same speed, even though there's more vehicle there, with less energy due to being very aerodynamic. A bicycle with a human on it out in the open air, even at lower speeds, believe it or not, has the aerodynamics of a brick. It's just not aerodynamic. You have a lot of body, clothing, wheels, spokes, tubes, all this stuff that breaks up the air and makes it very turbulent. And when you have a velo, something basically shaped like a teardrop, that gets rid of most of that drag. That's a big part of it. So you take that and add a little more weight in for safety and for practicality and a better ride. Not as easy to pedal, but with the help of modern electrics. And there's something that people have brought up so many times is, does it have a regen? That exists now. There's systems out there that you break by regenerating your batteries.
Oh, yeah.
That exists now.
Yeah.
And they figured it out and they've done a great job.
Awesome.
We have a Canadian company that makes an amazing product, and that's going to be that's going to be the heart of my velomobiles, is their system.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible how ingrained in our minds the car is, and ingrained in our cities too, right? Like they're built around it. And this solution, I think one of the benefits of the solution, right, is that it's not necessarily giving up all of the convenience of the car, right? But it's doing it in a way that nonetheless sort of skirts around all of these very expensive systems to like be part of, right? Because if you start adding it up, right, you got your car payment, you got your insurance payment, you got gas, you've got registration, you've got parking fees, that adds up to a lot of money every month. And people are already like so squeezed so much right now. And it's again, it's so ingrained in our culture that it's like everyone, like there's still this kind of like, I remember when I was still married, right? Like there was kind of this expectation of like, well, I'm turning 16. I'm turning 18. Oh, I just graduated from college. Like, when do I get my car? And unfortunately we were like, well, we're not doing that. But
Right.
Still there's this is so normal that I expect to be given this, and I mean, for me, I got my first car when I was 15. I never drove it because I didn't actually get my license until I was 27, but like still.
Yeah. As a teenager, as a young adult, that's freedom. And depending on your demographic, that's more freedom or less freedom.
Yeah.
I think there's several reasons why kids these days aren't just, it was everyone got a car at 16 where I lived.
Yeah.
And that was just the way it is. That's part of growing up and being an adult. And luckily kids these days have a different way of looking at the world and realizing, I don't want a huge money pit.
But it's not just kids, right? I mean, that was the example I used, but like so many people sort of see a car as like, well, I have to work, so I need a car, and like, again, the structure of our cities, of our neighborhoods encourages that, right? Because you live over here and then I guess you have your office park if people still work in those, or you can't afford to live close to where you work. So you have to, live like half an hour away. And so then you have to commute, right? And, one of the blessings of COVID, I think, right, was that it made remote work so much more normal. So a lot of people even still have been able to kind of get a little bit more free of that.
Luckily, we did learn some things with COVID about the remote working, and unfortunately, the feds have done the get back to work physically, and again, that's just promoting their systems.
Yes.
But luckily, a lot of that has stuck. There's been businesses that realize, oh, it's cheaper to not have everybody in the office every day. That's great. Some of that still, we managed to hang on to that. That's real nice. If you are stuck to a car lifestyle, there is a company that literally within the last month has released their first production solar vehicle. Has just been produced.
What?
Yes.
We have solar cars now.
Correct.
I love that.
I've been rooting for them for years.
Yeah.
And I was really worried with this current administration, they're going to figure out how to stomp them out, especially considering that they're competition for Tesla. But unfortunately, with all the years of R&D, their target price of getting the car out the door to the public is they didn't make that by maybe $10,000 or $20,000.
Oh, okay.
But imagine you spend the same amount of money for your solar car as a Tesla, but spending money on electricity is more than ever. And so just like a gas car, even though it's still much cheaper, you have a lot of money in maintenance, getting that car down the road. These new cars are so efficient that if you live in an area with a lot of sunlight and you have a minimal commute, or maybe every other day commute, you can literally drive this car and never have to plug it in. So it's the world's first solar production car.
Wow.
So they're a company out of Southern California.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. The company's called Aptera.
Aptera, okay.
They're really neat.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that.
And it's a 3-wheel platform.
Okay.
Which is very stable in opposition to a lot of people's beliefs. As long as it's a tadpole layout, that's 2 wheels in the front, 1 in the rear.
Right.
It's very stable. And that allows it to be insured as a motorcycle. And as far as the DMV is concerned, a 3-wheel platform is a motorcycle. So
it's cheaper.
Even though you still have the safety of a car, it is insured as a motorcycle, which is much cheaper for insurance. So you're not completely sidestepping the system, but every bit of it is cheaper.
Yeah.
And a place where they're really trying to stomp out the gas vehicle in California, especially the diesels. They've really given them a bad name, but they're trying to go towards electrics. But our power grids literally will not support a conventional electric vehicle down there. There's just way too much need versus power that's available.
You're saying because there are so many cars on the road in Southern California that the power grid there can't actually...
If everybody bought an electric car down there and went to plug in their cars, whether it be on the road or at night at their homes, the power grid literally will not support that. It will cause what they call a brownout.
Oh, interesting.
There's more people trying to consume energy than is available.
Yeah. But of course, when it comes to data centers, we're totally happy to be creating more infrastructure to create more power.
Right. And that's going to create some ugly stuff in the future, I fear.
Yeah.
But so anyhow, Aptera, for the people that can't have a velomobile in their world.
Sure.
Really a vehicle that doesn't really exist for the most part. what available bill is now is not practical for most people. So that's a big part of my push, is to make that happen. So alternate things besides that car could be available bill for some. It could be hopefully Aptera takes off, and I don't see how they can't unless somebody stomps on them.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, so that's the answer. Those are answers.
Yeah.
My vehicle still takes electricity, but the carbon footprint is so tiny. It's the same as an e-bike compared to an electric car. Not even comparable.
Yeah, well, and I've heard, as far as like electric cars go, right? I've heard that you can actually buy an electric motor and replace in certain models the gas motor in your car, which is such a better, in my mind, solution than buying a whole brand new electric vehicle. Because think about it, like, we have all of these cars on the road already, right? And if the solution is replacing them with EVs, fully, like, whole new EVs, then we're essentially saying, and all of the rest of these cars are now garbage. And we do not need to be producing more garbage, right? And so, like, if there's anyone like listening who's mechanically inclined and wants to look into this, like, I think there's a business model here, so look into it. But
yeah, there's a couple ways to go on that. One is there are companies that do conversions.
Yeah.
So you can find those companies, and maybe you have a collector car, or it's not unfortunately a very economic solution as far as how much money you'd have to spend to do.
But is it less money
does
than
exist.
Buying a brand new car?
For the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it kind of needs to be a specific circumstance.
Sure.
To make it practical, to make it work. But as you mentioned, if you're mechanically inclined, I've seen people build electric vehicles unbelievably cheap. This is an extreme example, but I've read a few stories where a gentleman went to the wrecking yard and he bought a decommissioned forklift, and he gutted the drivetrain in his old pickup and drove to work every day. And it's a very minimal system. So it has low power draw to get him to work every day. He had a pickup that would go 35 miles an hour max speed, but there's no highway in his commute.
Right.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So he had a very cheap, I'm talking like less than $1,000 that he built this electric vehicle.
Wow.
So that's an extreme case, right? But
Sure.
But that's an example of there's ways to do it. There's so many kits out these days, more than ever. And really with YouTube University,
Love that.
there's so much information online.
Yes.
And so many people just handling it step by step. Really, if you just pay attention to what you're doing, most people that have mechanical abilities can do it themselves. And there's so many battery options out there. You can do it's a little clunky, but you can just use old lead acid batteries and have an EV. It's not going to be much of a performance vehicle, but you can do that.
Yeah.
If you want something with more performance, there's so much out there with lithium ion and building your own BMS systems, and there's a lot that can be done. So that is an option. That is an option. And it's hard to get enough solar to do that unless you build your own system that is like a home-based system.
You mean to charge the electric
to charge,
vehicle?
right?
See.
Right.
I had a friend who was looking into converting his house to solar, and the phrase he was using to describe it, and it was like a little tongue-in-cheek, but mostly serious. He's like, look, like, this is future-proofing my house. And I think you kind of pointed to this earlier. It's like, again, as these systems start to crumble, it's like, do you want to be relying on the grid?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you also said earlier something about, like, especially as we have growing inflation, it's like your dollars will be worth less sort of as we get further into this. So invest in stuff now that will actually help you down the line, as for instance, like if the grid starts to be less reliable or just massively expensive because, the utility companies are selling all of the power to the data centers and like jacking up the rates for everyone else, right, as a result. So, I mean, are there sort of other areas that you see sort of where people might want to be thinking about investing as a way of future-proofing their own lives?
Well, simply put, I'll just put it this way.
Yeah.
Think of everything that you need to get through the day. What are your needs?
Mm-hmm.
What are your needs? What are your needs that are being filled by spending money because it's being provided for you by a system? So even if it doesn't make full economic sense in your mind right now is the time to invest in things that give you an alternate to the system to get these needs met. Because at some point, we're not going to be able to have the resource to provide these things for ourselves.
Yeah.
So in my mind, now is the time to invest to get out of these systems. Investing is not investing money. Money is decreasing in value way too fast. Invest in ways to get out of these systems that require money to get through the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, to like kind of ease back from maybe some of the like fear kind of based motivation sort of concepts that might be coming up for people, right? It's like another way of sort of thinking about this and motivating this is saying, look, like we know that we're actually helping support these systems by continuing to be plugged in and continuing to feed money to them, right? So if there are people or systems that you are supporting that are doing things in this world that you don't agree with, whether it be how they're treating other people or the planet, or whether they're, I mean, an example that's coming to my mind right now is, the use of pesticides on foods, right? It's like, okay, well, if you don't support that, if you don't agree with that, do what Karl's saying and divest from supporting that and figure out how can I invest in solving those problems for myself without supporting those people. Right.
Certainly.
And that's very much in line with like the billionaire boycotts and stuff that's happening right now. Right.
Doing this footwork is never convenient. They make it convenient to take the easy path.
Right.
It's very convenient to click, and you've got something off of Amazon. It's very convenient to go to Home Depot that has a large selection of things. My opinion is just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just keep a list in front of you of all the people that contributed to this administration and do not support them, because that's going to be our demise.
Yeah.
So get away from those people, figure out how to do it on your own.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information out there.
Right. And it just takes that footwork and that a little bit of time investment. So before we wrap up, are there any other topics you'd like to share with our listeners on this subject?
I did want to talk about a little bit about, I mentioned that I don't pay rent. And that's a huge area that a lot of people have already figured out. They realize that's not the way they want to spend their money, or they don't have the money for that just to have a place to sleep. And automobiles, speaking of automobiles, have become a big part of people becoming nomads and people having the lifestyles that they want to have, and that can also be their home. And the system does not support that. The system doesn't like that. So it's illegal
Of course.
to sleep in your car.
Yeah.
People have figured out a lot of that. They get Sprinter vans, and they put a work vest around the seat and a hard hat in the window. Or they build these things out without any windows in them and put all the windows to the sky so they can live the lifestyle that they want. even though obviously the legalities are not for the people. But that vehicles, they're quite expensive. And a lot of people have figured out that that's why there's a huge DIY in building out those vans. And there's a lot of people figuring out how to not pay as much in insurance or
registration fees, maybe.
all the things, right? And often it's not completely legal. Montana has a huge program. A lot of people get their plates out of Montana because they can sidestep a lot of these things. And if someone's living a fully nomadic lifestyle and they don't actually have an address, it is legal to do it that way.
Oh, okay.
So that's very helpful. Nice thing is they've really put that out there. Like you can surf Instagram and there it is, you know. Hey, there's a better way to make your life work. I like that. I hope it stays that way.
Mm-hmm.
So in a small way, Montana is kind of like still the Wild West. You can do things through there that you can't in other ways. There's ways to change up your insurance. Instead of insuring multiple vehicles, which is what some people's businesses or lifestyles require, you can get broad form and insure yourself as a driver and save a whole bunch of money on insurance. There's a lot of ways, if you still have to operate in the system, there's a lot of ways to still save money. It just takes some footwork.
Yeah.
And you don't need to use AI to figure that out.
Human-powered roots around rules, guys. We got them.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate that, right? It's there are legal, if not supported necessarily, ways to move, like navigate these systems in ways that support you and your goals. And sometimes it takes a little extra footwork, a little extra research, maybe a little extra effort, but like they are there and it's just about looking for them and then having the gumption to like follow through.
I like to break it down and think about every single place that I spend money and how can I do it differently. You could do something like print out your bank statement for the last 2 or 3 months and look and see where has all your money gone.
Yes.
And then think about every single little thing. Like, how could I have done this differently? There often is a way.
Right. Right. And I mean, even if it's not totally cutting, for me, right? It's like, even if it's not totally cutting that out, it could be, how could I bring some of this money back into my community?
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, something that I did, right, in that vein was I canceled all of my streaming subscriptions and I go to Movie Madness now, you know, and like go to the movie theater that's like the independent local movie theater that's like nearby. And then I get to feel that like I'm supporting my community, like yummy juice.
That's huge, more than people realize.
Yeah, because it's like you're supporting real people who are your neighbors, right? And then they're going to do it because they own local businesses and they know, right? And so it just keeps like cycling and through this.
Right. Someone's just filling me in on that. When you spend money outside of our local economy, that's like, in a sense, throwing it away. Spending it locally is fourfold on how much it benefits everybody around you.
Wow.
So
wow,
it's huge.
Yeah. No, the image that actually comes to me as far as like not spending locally is like we have these like mega corporations, right? And they come in and they got their little vacuums and they're just vacuuming up all the value, right? All the money, all the wealth, and they're taking it out. Like they're not coming here reinvesting in that. No. That is not the game plan. Well, I think that's a really good place to wrap up. I really appreciate you coming and lending your time and energy and presence to this project. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I love sharing and ultimately being part of the team. We're making a team that's going to make the world a better place.
Yeah, we're part of the team and we're cross-pollinating, sharing information and resources. And
a must.
Yes.
It takes community to survive this.
Yes, yes, yes. And to thrive this. All right, New Humans fam. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the New Humans for New Earth podcast. I'm Queenie. If you found this episode to be inspirational, helpful, or informative, please share it to your social media. Share it with your friends, your partner, a family member, or anyone that you love. If you loved this episode, please leave a review. And be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. This is how we grow the New Humans community and help inspire others to join us in co-creating New Earth. This world is what we make it. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode.